We are here with Matt Fleck, how to eliminate all PII and get even more from your data. Matt is the founder of Anonomatic. Great name, can't spell it, but founder and CEO. And I just think you're going to enjoy hearing his unique solution of how do you hide all this stuff from the bad guys and yet use it. Matt, you have the con, and welcome.
Wonderful. Thank you, Brad. And thank you, everybody, for joining. As Brad said, we're going to talk about how you can utilize your data, identify data, not have any PII in it, and you'd be surprised to learn that you can get even more use out of your data than you could if it was fully identified. We'll go ahead and get into that. There's three main things that I'd like you to take away from today's session. Basically, there's this concept of smart anonymous data. We'll get into what the difference is between smart and dumb anonymous data in just a moment. But the three main things is this is a new solution for a very old and long-standing problem that has plagued a lot of people in pretty much every industry. Smart anonymous data is actually safer, cheaper, and faster to use than either dumb anonymous data or identified data. And it still allows you the full use of all your data without any of the costs, risks, delays, exposures, NDAs, any of the other things that come along with always using identified data. We're going to talk about all of these items. So the first question is, what are the dangers of using PII inside your data science operations? That's primarily where we're going to focus today. And chances are, if you're listening to this session, watching this session, you have 1, 2, 3, maybe more of these issues that you have to deal with on a regular basis, and quite likely some others. This situation is utilizing PII is a necessary evil. It's a cost of doing business because it's rarely ever the data you want to work on. It's simply the ability or the need for you to work on that data, which is why you have to carry this dead weight around. But it increases so much liability. The question is why? What can you do about it? Well, if it is so dangerous, then why are people using it? Well, why are you using it? Good chance, most common thing is that people utilize PII in their data science data because they need to combine data at the individual level. Whether it's multiple records from the same source, the same system coming in, then you're going to load it into your warehouse or your data lake, or it's bringing data from different systems. It may even be at the extreme level, joining data from completely different divisions, organizations, countries. How do you combine all that data if you don't have the individual details? The second most common reason people want to use PII or feel that they have to is so that they can create a return path. This is when you're going to take all your data, utilize it in some sort of data science operation, AI, analytics, machine learning, and you're going to generate some sort of result. Now, that result may be a credit risk on an individual. It may be a recommendation for medical treatment. It may be just targeted marketing. How can you ever do anything with that result if it's not fully identified? Third thing, less common, is that they use it for direct identification. So if you're in an analytics situation and your users want to go and look at an outlier and say, who is this person? Why is this going on? Why are they there? Why do we have this thing? That's another reason that people include personal information inside their data science operations. The final reason they use it is because if they simply try to anonymize it and take all of the PII out, that renders the data dumb and leaves it pretty much useless. How useless? Well, current de-identification techniques that generate dumb data, the data has really very little practical value. If you've tried to use it or you've looked at it, you know what I'm talking about. You can use it for aggregations, but really very little else. And more to the point, you can't do anything with it afterwards. Sure, I can sum and I can average and I can do that sort of things. But if I need to generate some sort of individualized results, I can't do it. I can't merge that data. I have no chance to do a return path. So that's why it's dumb. It'll give you some information. It'll do what it needs to do. It'll dig a ditch, but it can't do anything else for you. On the other hand, smart anonymous data is fully useful. You can use smart anonymous data and get every utilization out of it as if it were fully identified. You can match smart anonymous data and merge it with other smart anonymous data at the individual level. You can optimally have a return path. You can generate those individualized results and return those results to the system of record or third party, wherever it needs to go. And you can selectively re-identify what you need to when permitted. Now, not everybody is going to want or be legally permitted to do a re-identification. But in those cases where you can and you do want to, you can re-identify to the level that you want. For example, if you're taking all this data to do a marketing effort and you bring all this smart anonymous data from any number of different systems, and you can match it and you merge it and you can slice and dice it and come up with the perfect marketing offer for each individual, you don't need the personal information to do any of that. And you can then take that data, the resulting targeted marketing offer, attach just say the first name and the email address, and return that or send that to the marketing system, which will then send out those targeted offers. Another thing Smart Anonymous does, which is really very powerful, is it supports all these evolving responsibilities and obligations for data privacy. First and foremost is right to be forgotten, limited retention, localization, and any other sort of geographic limitations, including bringing EU-based data back to the US. All of these things can be done with smart anonymous data. And if you're thinking it's like another can of worms, that's not the case. There's actually no additional risk in using smart anonymous data than there would be if you just simply pulled all of the identifiers straight out. So let's talk about how this actually works. So if you're going to generate smart anonymous data with Anonomatic's PII Vault, the way it works is you have data coming from some source system. And source systems typically very, very secure. They've got the row level, column level rights to who can see what data, what can they do. Everything's perfectly fine there. It's when you pull that data out, the identified fact data, and that could be any industry, any type of data, financial, medical, et cetera. When it has the direct identifiers like names, IDs, email addresses, anything that can be used as a direct identifier, that data is at risk. It's left its safe environment. But you need to pull it out and you need to do something with it so that you can use it in data science and the whole ETL process. Well, that data goes through the PII Vault in a process we call pass-through anonymization. And the result of pass-through anonymization is you get all the data that you want to do all your analytics and other data science on. But instead of any of those direct identifiers, you have a completely random, what we call a polyanonymous or poly-ID. And that means it's a multi-value non-identifying identifier, actually even HIPAA compliant. That identifying value with the fact data, you can then store. And you've got that in your repository, and now it's completely de-identified and you can use it. You might be saying, great, fine, I can do that anywhere with any sort of de-identification. Here's what the pass-through anonymization and smart anonymous data can do. You have a second source, and it can do the exact same thing. Now, when that second source sends their identified data using pass-through anonymization through the vault, it gets its own set of fact data, which is safe to use, and its own set of poly-IDs. And you are completely in control of whether or not you get the same poly-ID or a different poly-ID for each individual. In this case, we're going to assume that this is a different system, maybe even from a different organization that is sending their data through, and every poly-ID for each individual will be different between the first system and the second system. And again, it's going to be different in the third system. So we have all these different sets of completely anonymous data that has no direct identifiers, but we still can't really use it yet. What we want to do is we want to find the overlap. We want to take a look at any of those anonymous and unique members in the first group of data and the anonymous ones in the second, and we want to find who is common between them. Well, I just said that those poly IDs are different. We're not using tokenization. We're not using a shared tokenization method where everybody who's participating knows the rules so that everybody who looks at a given token could go, oh, okay, I can figure out who this is. No, all of these values are completely random for each individual from each source. So what happens when you have all these different sources and you want to find that commonality? Well, basically, let's take a look at it this way. You've got those three systems. In each one of those three systems, you've got different poly IDs for each individual. Well, this is where the PII vault comes in again. And that's the value of the PII vault. It steps in any place there is any risk of identification, and it takes that risk away.
Hey, Matt, we got a question.
Sure.
So I think it's self-evident, or at least it says here, it's self-evident that the data is anonymized at rest. But is it still anonymized upon moving? I mean, is there ever a weakness in the system? Because if you've made things anonymized at rest, you've reduced my footprint in terms of cyber attack significantly.
Yes, absolutely. It is 100% anonymized at rest once it passes through. It's also the pass-through anonymization can be either streamed or in batch mode. So as it comes through, it's up to you how you implement it. Is it once a week as you move data from A to B? Or is it simply as you ingest data from whatever source, it flows through, and before it even enters your system, it's all completely anonymized.
Great. So thank you. I'm sure I'll interrupt you with more things, but I'm the pest. Thank you.
Yeah, not a problem. Not a problem at all. And feel free to use your voice to interrupt. Can't see over there. So here's what happens. Let me take another step back. We've got these three different sources. They're all completely anonymized. They've got their individuals' poly IDs. The PII vault comes in and permission at multiple levels. The source who is approved, and this would be the data aggregator, the processor, whoever is going to collect these different sources of data and want to use it, they have to be approved by each of the different sources to say, yeah, this person can go ahead and merge my data. Plus, this is also where right to be forgotten comes in. The ability with smart anonymous data is individuals can be tagged as do not allow my data to be matched. So the linking table comes in from the PII vault. And the linking table, probably you already got here in front of me, basically says poly ID 1 from source 1 is the same person as poly ID from source 2, and 2 to 3, etc. And when you have that linking table and you have all this anonymous data, then you're able to completely create your data warehouse totally with smart anonymous data. There's not a single byte of PII in here, and yet you can do everything you need to do with all the data sciences. That's really kind of the simplicity and the beauty of how this works. So where we were before, where we're trying to figure out what those common members are and who they are, it's as simple as bringing the PII vault in to link that data with the polyanonymous IDs. So let's take a look at some examples of how it was used. So this is from highly regulated environment. We have on the top left here, we've got a pie chart that is showing the types of medical services received by high school students from a school-based health center. And so it's just very simple, distributing, who went in for depression, for chlamydia, for all sorts of different things. Selected immunizations, go ahead, take a look. You can dig in through there. Lots of systems will let you dig into relationships of a single type of data. This very simple pie chart or bar chart shows the relative absentee rate by school year of boys versus girls. So you can look at that and you can say, yeah, they pretty much stay in sync. Both of them, interesting information, things that the people who run those organizations would want to know. But how do you bring those two things together to learn something that you could never find out before? And our polyanonymization and our smart anonymous data allows that to happen. Before this chart down here on the bottom was created, which shows the total absentee rate by gender. You can't quite see it there, but you can see the blue and the pink right there. By the types of medical services they received, nobody had ever seen or known that females who go in for contraceptive management have significantly more absentees than anyone else, almost everybody else combined. And that is critical information that nobody knew until all this data was anonymized, linked, and analyzed. Now, could you have done all this with identified data? Absolutely. Would it have cost 10 times more, been a lot riskier? And would you have then had to purge the data, after a couple of years instead of being able to keep it indefinitely like they can now? Yeah, absolutely. So this is just a stunning capability, and this particular reporting that they're doing, and the system that this capability is in, is looking to be rolled out to every school-based health center across the entire country. So how does it work? What does it actually look like? Yeah, man, it all sounds great, but show me the money. What's really behind here? So with smart anonymous data, this is the data that you would see looking at the actual data behind the student's attendance. There is the gender, race, school year, what grade are they in, how many days were they present, and how many days were they absent. On the other hand, you've got the same thing, or similar anonymous data of the type of things for the healthcare services. Both of these, the patient key and the student key, are poly IDs. They're UUIDs. There is no intelligence in there. You can show this number to anyone. It doesn't exist in any system on the planet with the actual identifying information. It's multiple valued. It doesn't exist anyplace else. The third piece here is the matching table. And the matching table says, hey, this student ID and this patient ID, they belong to the same person. And they are linked together. So this allows those different data sets in simple ETL, SQL joins, what have you, to come together so that your data scientists can get off and running and discover things. So remember this list that we had at the start, where all these different things that are the dangers of using PII in your activities? They all go away, every single one of them, because you don't need consent for anonymous data. In pretty much every instance, with very, very few exceptions, anonymous data is safe to use. Along those lines, most regulations that cover data privacy specifically cut off if that data is fully anonymous. And here we go. You can completely anonymize that data, but it doesn't mean you have to stop using it. If this data, we're not a security solution, and we're not going to stop you from getting breached. However, if you are breached, there's minimal, possibly zero liability, because there's no identifying information in that data. Why? Because hackers can't steal what isn't there. Yeah, they may get the fact data, but they can't attribute it to any individual. And along those lines, internally, your own people, well, they can't either intentionally or unintentionally expose what isn't there. They can't improperly use it, look up their girlfriend's activity, nothing like that. And the overall cost of identifying the data is a tiny fraction of what it is to protect it using the current methodologies. And it's not even mentionable when you talk about the cost of if there is a breach and it's exposed.
Hey, Matt, we have a question.
Sure.
We had an awful lot of breach management discussion yesterday, and it occurs to one of our listeners that this would be a great way, because if the data is anonymized and it's exfiltrated in a breach, it's virtually unusable. So can I use that in my breach response, my incident response, in terms of communicating to the consumer? And have you seen any of your clients or other instances where breaches have occurred of anonymized data and what they did differently as a result? Because I think it seems like it reduces the risk significantly.
We believe it pretty much, it almost eliminates the risk. I mean, the data is still there. So if you've got all your sales data here, someone could still see how much sales you have, but they wouldn't know who your customers are. And it doesn't matter how many systems they hack, they wouldn't be able to link that data to the actual individual.
Mhm.
So we have not had anybody who is using the system who knows that they've ever been breached. But along those lines, when the database or the people who are using the smart anonymous data in the healthcare and school system were trying to get more people, getting some dashboard developers, the people they talked to first off were saying, oh my goodness, you've got that data. We don't want anything to do with it. We never work with identified data. Any PHI, forget it. We're out. I was like, oh no, don't worry about it. It's all completely anonymous. It's all done. You'll know the individuals, but you won't know anything else. And so along those lines, it does just take the problems away.
So one of the other question is, again, a lot of it's coming back from yesterday. We had a COVID discussion, right? I now have a lot of PII that, particularly PHI, personal health information, that I have never had to deal with. And the question is it easy to put your toe in without having to anonymize everything in the organization using a tool like this, rather than securing or applying this tool broadly?
Oh, absolutely. So our first version was a detailed level API that you would have your developers implement. And the second level, which is out now, is this pass-through anonymization. And basically you were able to, in a couple of steps, you simply drop the data into our UI, or you configure it in another way. And then you set the metadata. And the metadata is you go through, you tell us what the data is that you're sending us, because we don't know. You just drop a file and you tell us what field is a first name, what's a social security number, what's a birth date, that sort of thing. And then you tell us what you want to do with it. So fields may be completely redacted, get rid of the social security number, don't show the names, partially redact the social security number so we only see the last 4 digits maybe. Anything that is the fact data, leave it alone. Don't touch it, completely ignore it. And you do that once, and then every time you send the data through, you simply have that. So you don't have to anonymize everything. You can simply do, and this is what most people do to give this a try, because this is so different from the way people have ever tried to solve this problem before, is, you know what, I'm going to take a use case that I can manage and I'm going to try this out. And then it's what is amazing to us here at Anonomatic is how few questions we get. Somebody is up and running on this and they're looking at it and they're like, yeah, I get it. It is this easy. It may seem like it's too easy. It's, well, there's always a lot of work to make something easy.
Well, you're a pretty good salesperson, because we're getting a lot of questions, big guy. I got another one.
Sure.
We are a company that ships data back and forth to Germany quite a bit, and we have yet to solve the Schrems problem of shipping that data without risk, and we're flying blind here. Do you have any clients that are currently using it to meet the privacy laws in terms of shipping data back and forth from, in particular, a GDPR company? Or
we don't have anyone who's using it yet, so I would be thrilled if you reach out to me personally and let's set up a proof of concept, a trial for you. You can also go to our website and sign up, and we have a white paper specifically on this, on the European Data Protection Board, of how you can adhere to the EDPB's supplemental measures on transferring data, utilizing the PII vault. Out of the box today, we solve that problem for you.
Great. Well, we got 2 other minutes. You want to finish up here?
Oh, okay, sure, great. You probably went through the rest of the list. So the other thing to just keep in mind is, how do you implement this thing? First off, I mean, you can look at this and you think, my goodness, this is so simple. I can just do this myself. The reality is you can't. You have to buy this technology. You can't build it yourself. And you have to ensure that whoever you get it from, like Anonomatic, cannot access the data, which is perfectly fine. We deploy our solution inside your infrastructure. It takes 15 minutes to set up, and then you're on your own. You can do everything you need. You have to ensure the best practices. But if you don't buy the technology, if you try to build it, you're actually not in compliance, because then you have the keys to do that re-identification. With PII Vault, that's all we do is protect this data. And because we don't have access to any of it, and you don't have access to do that linkage directly and see the PII, that's how it's compliant. So the three things that I wanted you to remember, plus the fact that you already knew that PII was dangerous, is there is a new way to do this. And it is fast, it is cheap, it is easy, and it is secure as can be. And you get to use your data fully.